Hi, I'm Michelle Manetti. For those of you who don't know me, I have been DJing for 25 years. And I am just going to tell you a little bit about how my journey started. So I started life as a vocalist, and I was singing sessions in studios, and I always was really into house music. And in my sessions, I was like, I don't want to be just singing someone else's songs. I want to make my own songs. So I learned how to produce. I actually went to university and did a degree in music production. But during that time, I was like, if I'm going to make house music, I probably need to know what works on a dance floor. So it made sense for me to then learn to DJ. And then 25 years later, I'm a full-time DJ. So that was my journey. And yes, I did a degree in music somewhere in the middle there, but it is not the integral part of it. Like, everybody's journey is different. You will all have your own way and route and find your own feet in DJing. And the most important thing is the love. So show a hands who loves music in here. Because if you don't, please leave. Okay, that's good. Everyone put a hand up. Okay, so firstly, it's really nice to see a lovely mix of people here. Thank you so much for everyone showing up and showing your interest and being here today. Okay, I want to show of hands who has DJed here before. Okay, a few of you. And the other of you never touched any equipment, anything. Okay, out of those people, who has played in a bar or a club or something before? Okay, a couple of you. And of the people who have never DJed before, how many of you go to an afters and put the Spotify playlist on? There you go. That is DJing like that. Welcome. Number one lesson, it's all about the music. It's actually not about this. It's not about this. It's not about the decks. It's about the music. It's about the journey. It's about your artistic creation of how you are telling the story with the music that you're playing. That is the art of DJing, not the skill. I can teach you the skill. I can teach you how to mix two tracks together, but I cannot teach you the art of DJing. That's in here. And many, many moons ago, when I was trying to be a singer, I actually was supposed to go to drama school and do musical theatre. And one of the things they actually said to me, one of the first things they said in the audition is like, we can bring you here and we teach you how to sing and how to act and how to dance. But we cannot teach you how to be a singer, a dancer, or an actor. The same applies for DJing. I can teach you the skill of DJing. I can teach you how to mix two tracks together. I can teach you how to loop. I can teach you all the skills. But the art of DJing is something that cannot be taught. So next thing, show of hands who has some music equipment at home. Okay, a few of you. Good. DJ equipment, I'm talking just music equipment. Okay, so number one rule of being a DJ, you need some equipment. Because if you're learning to play the guitar, or you're learning to play the bass, or you're learning to play any instrument, if you don't have that instrument at home to practice, you're not going to be able to play that instrument. So DJing is exactly the same thing. If you don't have the equipment at home, you can't learn. So you need to invest. If you are really serious about being a DJ, even if it's just a hobby, you need to invest in some decks, something that can play. And yeah, it doesn't have to be fussy. It doesn't have to be expensive. It just needs to be able to practice on. And like, I can promise you, any set of decks, any controller, anything in the world, all the kind of things, even though it sort of looks like a spaceship, pretty much all do the same thing. There are different types of equipment that you can DJ on. Can anyone name what they might be? Sure. Vinyl? Yeah, exactly. Vinyl. That's how I actually learned about DJ. But yeah, so vinyl is the first one. Anyone else? A controller. Yeah. And usually with a lot of controllers, some of the controllers have USB input as well. Most of the controllers will be controlled by some kind of software. It all does the same kind of thing. Basically, imagine this is a giant USB, kind of has the same sort of functionality. There are different types of controllers, all have different functions, but as I said, most of them pretty much all do the same thing. And there are different types of software. Quite a lot of them are free, but today I'm going to be showing you some stuff on Serato. Number one rule, know your music and dig for music. Like, that is what's going to set you apart from all the other DJs, is the music that you have, whether that is on your USB or wherever it is you're having. They call it digging because obviously that was what we used to do when we used to play vinyl. You'd literally dig crates of music. And there's loads of ways that you can find music. And there's loads of ways that you can get music and play music, right? Can anyone tell me one place that they might get music from? SoundCloud. And often SoundCloud is free. So great. Anyone else know of anywhere they can get music from? Beatport. Beatport is perfect, yeah. Beatport is specifically set up for DJs. So it's really good because it's got separated into genres, it shows you all the things that you need to know as a DJ, so it's really good. You can also download music either in MP3 or WAV or AAF or whatever the kind of formats you want. Record store, exactly. So if you're actually going to buy records, record store. Another place that's really good for getting records, if you're actually buying records or CDs, is Discogs. It's amazing. Like, that's pretty much where I buy all my vinyl and stuff from now. And I do still buy vinyl. But the art of digging is a whole different thing. Like, you can buy music from everywhere, but actually sourcing, finding your music, finding your sound. Like, one of my biggest things that I use, it's my best friend, is Shazam. It doesn't always work. It's really annoying. You'll be like, yeah, I've got this track, and you get home, it's like, that was not what was playing. And it's really annoying. But one really amazing thing about Shazam as well is, like, I will probably listen to like DJ mixes on SoundCloud, for example, and I'll be like, what is this track? I don't know if any of you know, pretty much for every track that comes up on Shazam, it will list 20 other tracks that are like it. And then you can kind of steal that track from that DJ mix that you listen to, but maybe not use that one, but use 20 other tracks that sound exactly like it. So also algorithms for anything, like Bandcamp is an amazing one. One of the things I love about Bandcamp is you can follow people and then you can be told when they've bought a track. So you can go and find it and buy it for yourself too. So yeah, source your music legally and do your digging as much as possible. So when you found your music, the best thing that you need to do and the most important thing you need to do is organizing it into folders and files that make sense for you. I play so many different genres of music for so many different occasions. And it's really about organizing that music into something that makes sense for you. And the earlier that you start that, the better it is. Because trust me, it is a lifelong task. It is what I spend all of my time doing. And if you start to practice and you get your music, you've ordered it, you've put it into files, and you're ready to start DJing, the way that you get DJ gigs is hustle. And the hustle is real. And basically, never be afraid to ask. Never be afraid to show up. Always be there. Always be pleasant. Always be nice. Being nice is really important. The first thing I'm going to show you on this Dex is you have about 6 volume controls on here. So the master volume turns down everything that's playing, like all of the tracks, microphone, everything that is coming out is your master volume, right? And that is the thing that controls everything that's coming out into the ether, right? So that is probably the most important volume button that you have. And the next one is your headphones. That is a volume as well. You have channels, right? So each of your track will be loaded onto a separate channel. On this thing here, we have 2 channels only. So you've got 1 track, 2 tracks. So each channel will have its own gain. It's called gain. And what that does is it controls the volume just for that channel. Some channels will have like 4 or 5. Like the bigger mixers look like a spaceship and look really confusing. But it literally is just a duplicate of the same thing. It's not as confusing as it looks. As long as you know what happens on one channel, you know what happens on all of them. So each channel has its own gain, right? And that is really important because tracks all have different volumes. And one of those things is like, if you're playing an old 90s track that has some like weird compression, is really, really quiet, and then you've got a new track which has been produced recently, which often is really loud, you need to be able to control the volume of each track separately. Because what you don't want is one track that's playing that's really loud, and then you bring the next track in and it's like here volume-wise. And you have these kind of light indicators here, which will show you and help you to see to match the volume levels. So those two gains are really, really important. And next volume control is what you would call your like slider. And I want you to kind of imagine it like this. This is your gain for the channel, and this is your slider. So it's kind of going like this. And you can change the gain, and that will go up to here or up to here. But this will basically, the slider goes like that. So what it does is it allows you to have control of when you're bringing the track in. So your gain is how loud something is in the track, and you want to mix the two gains of both tracks separately. And then your slider will say how loud it is coming into the mix, right? And then the next volume control is what you call the crossfader. And this is kind of a bit more confusing to explain, but if you have got both sliders up, you've got your gains here, you've got both sliders up, what your crossfader does this. So the volume's up on both of them, but the crossfader here switches the loud volume from one side to another. Now that sounds really confusing to kind of explain it, but as I'm going to show you some transitions, it will make a lot more sense because there's different transitions that use the different types of sliders and things. The first thing I'm going to do is show you how to cue and load a track because that's really important. So the reason I've chosen I've got a few tracks in here, and I'm going to show you why these tracks are important. And the reason I've chosen pop music is because most dance music that is created usually starts on the beat that you want it to start on. So it's kind of already pre-cued for you. Loads of pop music doesn't. So this is a really good way for me to show you how to cue tracks, right? Cueing is really important. And the reason why you need to cue your tracks first is because that is the place that you are pressing play from. That is where the track is first going to start. Right? You know that bit that's like, Dark Child? We don't need that. Love you, Dark Child. Thank you very much for all the music that you made in the 90s. But we don't need that bit. So what I need to do is cue my track to the point that I want it to start playing. And this is where it gets slightly confusing because you have a play button, which if I press play, plays. If I was to press play again now, it will stop it in the place that I stopped it, and then carry on playing to the same point. That does not help me if I'm cueing a track because I want to keep going back to the beginning, right? So what you then need to do is create a cue point. So your cue, what will automatically happen, I'm going to press play and then press the cue button and you'll hear the difference. It's taking it back to the beginning. It's taking it back to the start of that track, right? But if I do it, I'll show you again. If I press play and then press the play button again, it stops it. Can you all see from there? It stops it where it's still playing. And then we'll just keep playing at that same point. We don't want that. We want it to go back to the beginning. And that's how you use your cue. Right. So I'm going to create my cue point on here of where I want the track to start. And when you're DJing, you kind of want it to start on the first beat of the bar, right? We all know what the first beat of the bar is, right? We know what phrasing is. Do we understand? Does anyone not understand? Okay, cool. Right, so what I want to do is start it from the Say My Name bit, right? To like here. Right, and you see what I did there, like I pulled the platter. Okay, I'm also going to teach you a little thing. There's 2 buttons on the top of here, which also you will find on most CDJs. There is a vinyl mode and there is a CD mode. I will tell you the difference of what that is. This is vinyl mode, right? I'm going to switch it off, and this is not vinyl mode. You can hear the difference, right? So one basically acts like a vinyl, and it kind of like makes that scratchy sound. And if you turn it off, it kind of acts as if it's just a CD and you don't hear that kind of glitchiness. I'm going to keep it on my vinyl mode because that's just how I like, but it's a total preference. Some people like one, some people like the other. Okay, so I'm going to make my cue point from where I want it to start. So I'm going to press play and hold the platter. I know. Say my name. Say my name. Okay, so I'm now going to press play again and then press the cue button. And what that's done now is it's created a cue point at that point, rather than it going back and saying, don't tell, because I don't need that. Right? So now if I do that again, I play the track, I press the cue, and it goes back to say my name. Right? Does everyone understand that? I'm going to show you with a couple of different tracks so you can see, and I can repeat it. So next one. I love Eve. Okay. We don't need all this bit. I'm going to let it play. I want it from there. Right? That is my cue point. And the good thing with when you're playing with like, and actually you will see it on CDJs and stuff as well, is you can see kind of what the track looks like because you've got the waveform. So you can sort of see where the downbeats are, you can see where the beats of the bar are, right? I want it to start from there. Okay? So I'm going to press play, and it stops it there, and then I press my cue button, right? Boom. So it's from there. Boom. I know this sounds like really basic, but actually it's one of the hardest things to get your head around. Whenever I've kind of taught people, it's like, yeah, it seems really easy, but when you get to it, it's like, it takes a little bit of practice to get that. Making your cue point, and then when you press play, making sure that when you go back, you want to go back to the beginning, you press that cue again. Because if you press play, as I said, it's just going to keep playing the track underneath, right? So you need to press the cue to take it back to the beginning. I'm going to show you one more track as well, just to here. There you go. Load. Wait from where I am. Okay. So I want it there, right? Press my play, press my cue button, and now it's time from this. Now, the reason I've showed you pop music, because there aren't that many dance music tracks that have that, but there's a few. I'm going to show you a couple just to keep, there you go, here's one. Right. Right? So that weird bit at the beginning, I don't need that, because if I'm trying to mix, I want it from the first beat of the bar, right? So I'm going to catch it there, press play, press my cue, and it started on that first beat of the bar. All right? Does everyone get that? Is everyone with me? Yes. Okay. Okay. So now we've got the cueing done. I'm going to show you the first transition. And again, I'm going to use pop music. Please forgive me. And the reason why this makes sense for pop music is because, as I said, the open format DJing, one of the transitions and the easiest transition for you to use is a fade in and fade out. No beat matching required, no technical skills required, literally just that, right? So you've got one up and you're going to reduce the volume of one and bring up the volume of the other, or like however you kind of want it, but you'll find a flow for it. And this is really good for playing music of multi BPMs and multi genres. And actually, just when you're first starting DJing, like it's the easiest transition you can do. It's the first thing that you need to learn. And one of the important things for this is your crossfade needs to be in the middle. Because you remember I was telling you about that crossfade is basically the volume between there. It needs to be directly in the middle so that when your two sliders come up and down, they work as volume controls themselves. If you have a crossfader over one side, if I was to then put the slider up on this side, it's not going to play because my crossfader is over the wrong side. So your crossfader needs to be in the middle when you are using your faders up and down, right? So when you're doing this, it really doesn't matter what the BPM of the track is. And the reason why this is really good with pop music is because quite a lot of pop music has like weird intros, right? Dance music, if anyone kind of knows about how dance music is built, it is in blocks of like 4, 8, 16, 32, right? So you have these really, really long intros to play around with. With pop music, with R&B, with kind of like open format music, it's like 4 bars. And often that has kind of like a little like, wah, whatever, I'm a singer. So like the Amory thing, it's got that little kind of like little intro that you can like pop in. So really, really makes it so much easier for you to like fade in, fade out, right? So, I'm gonna get my headphones. Okay. So that's the first time I picked up my headphones. Your headphones will help you to be able to cue what you're hearing, right? So at the moment, you've got one track playing out, and when you're DJing, your next track that you're going to bring in next, you won't be able to, like, the crowd won't be able to hear. You're going to be listening to that in your headphones. And the way that you do that is by the headphone cue, right? So you've got 2 buttons here, which basically have a headphone light on. And this, if I press this side, means I can hear this side. And this, if I press this side, means I can hear this side. And as I said, one of your volume controls is your headphones. So you want to be able to hear it. So you can also, with this, and quite a lot of other mixers, can hear both at the same time. That is really useful if you're like doing a beat match and stuff. But most of the time, you probably only want to listen to the track that you're bringing in, not the track that's playing, because you'll hear the track that's playing out in the crowd, right? So I'm going to cue my track here that I'm bringing in, just so I can listen to whether I've got the cue point in, whether I've got it starting from the right place, whether it's like the right track, like just selecting the right track, right? So I'm going to let this track play out a little bit, and then I'm going to do a really basic like transition of like fading one in, fading one out. Really easy. Now, did you hear that track that I played in was really loud, right? That's what you don't want to do. So that's a really good thing for me to show you. So you know what I was telling you about the light indicators here when you're like listening and making sure that the volume controls. So what I had, even on here you can actually visually see it, but this doesn't necessarily mean an indication. This track was like this volume and this track was this volume. But I could see the indicators from here. The track that was coming in was like really loud and you could hear that. If I was playing that in a club and you're like dancing away, you're like, whoa. It's like too loud, or the opposite is something that's like really quiet. So one of the things you need to remember when you're transitioning is making sure that the volumes roughly match. And you can do that by listening-ish, but also just by using your light indicators. And every single mixer will have light indicators for each channel. Right. So I'm going to do that transition again, right? And I'm going to show you again. Right. And I'm just doing this at any point in the track that makes sense. But if you're DJing, obviously one of the things you want to do is you want to make sure that that is in the right place. Like, you don't want to be like cutting in over the top of like a really important vocal part or like a breakdown, or, you know, you need to bring the track in when your phrasing makes sense. So I'm going to try and do that with this a little bit. And let it play out a little bit. And whilst I'm doing that, I'm going to have a look at my light indicators to see they should now be roughly about the same volume. I've just played with my gain, right? I'm going to wait till the end of the chorus and kind of bring it in. Yeah. Right? And what I did that time was slightly different, because I knew that this track kind of like started straight away. I actually put the fader up and pressed play rather than doing that. But the fade in, fade out thing is just like, just however the flow feels right. And it works really well with tracks that have kind of like an intro and an outro, because you can kind of like fade them into each other. It doesn't necessarily sound like fancy, but it works. And like, especially when you first start out DJing, your fade in, fade out transition is the first and most important one that you need to learn. So that's the first transition I'm going to show you. The next transition I'm going to show you is the same kind of principle, but using your crossfade. And most dance music, and also kind of open format stuff, generally tends to use your sliders. That's the plan. Your up and down sliders here. Most hip hop DJs, and yeah, I would say hip hop mostly, they always use the crossfade. And the reason why they use that is hip hop DJing often uses skills which I don't have, firstly, is like scratching and like DMC. Has anyone seen like DMC championships or anything, right? They're like crabbing and doing all these like tricks and like doing headstands on decks and all sorts of very weird stuff that I'm not going to do. But it's a completely different style of DJing. It's a completely different format of DJing. They're cutting tracks in, they're layering vocals over the top. They're doing all these like fancy tricks and stuff. And a lot of that is cutting from one side to the other really, really, really quickly. So I'm going to show you how to do a cut. And the cut is using your crossfader. So it's the opposite of what I just showed you. When you're using a crossfade mix, both of your sliders need to be up and your crossfade needs to be one side to the other, because that is what you're going to use your volume between the two. Whereas the other way is like, that is where you're doing your transition between the two. On this way, I'm doing this, right? So firstly, I'm going to make sure that they're cued into the right place. And when I'm doing the cut, this is really, really important. The first track on the play doesn't really matter, but the second track, right, this is the track I'm going to cut into. Leave it there. It's there, right? So I've called that. That is where the track is going to like cut from. So I'm going to press my play. Press my cue. So I know that it's going to come in at that point, right? So, as I said, I'm going to do a cut. The track that, when I'm doing the cut, it's really important to have both faders up, and your crossfade is the channel which is playing. Cut straight over. Right, I'm going to do that again. It's real quick. And as I said, the most important things are making sure that it's cued in the right place, so it starts exactly where you want it to start from. Secondly, that both your sliders are up, so the volume of both of them is up. And secondly, the crossfade is on the right place. It's a really simple, easy transition. The most important things, as I said, you've got to have the cue in the right place. It's got to be the exact point that you want that track to come in. So, like, that's the important part of the track. It needs to come straight in. It needs to be the first beat of the bar. You need to have both of your sliders up, and you need to have your cue point, the crossfader in the right place. Okay, so this is what we all came here for. I'm going to show you some beat matching. Beat matching is matching the beats, the BPM of two tracks, and then creating a transition from one to the other, right? So it's not an easy thing to learn. And the way that I learned how to beat match was because I learned on vinyl, right? So the thing about CDJs, controllers, all of these kind of like digital equipment, they have loads of visual cues, which really help. Like, use your visual cues. That's what they're there for. But when I was learning how to DJ on vinyl, I didn't have that. I only had my ears. So it took that much longer to learn. And actually, the way that I learned this, which everybody in my house hated, was I had 2 vinyls and did not take them off. And I would spend hours and hours mixing from one to the other and back again. And what that did was it trained my ear and it trained my brain exactly what I was listening out for. Because the hardest thing about beat matching is for your brain to decipher what track is playing and what is the track that's coming in. Like, it's really, really hard. And it is literally just a case of practice, 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 and your brain will start to get used to it. But as I said, as horrible as it sounds, if you have the same 2 tracks on the decks and just keep practicing with those 2 songs, your brain will not learn how to listen out for the right thing much, much quicker. So you've got all these visual cues on here, which are like, as I said, like, you can visually see the waveform. You can visually see when the first beat of the bar is. You can visually see that. But you've also got your visual cue of, like, up the top, you've got the BPM counter that tells you what BPM it is. Now, the next thing I want to show you is your tempo adjust control here. And what this does is basically change the BPM of the track, okay? So it's speeding it up and it's slowing it down. And that's really, really, really important when you're beat matching 2 tracks. Because if one track is going really fast and one track is going slow, it's going to be like this. The art of beat matching is getting the 2 tracks not only at the same speed, but at the same place, so the beats, exactly as it says on the tin, are matched. What you then need to do is make sure they're at the same point. And how you do that is by adjusting your jog pattern here. Now, one of the really lovely things about this particular controller is it actually has these little light indicators that tell me what I need to do. So this track is playing here, and if I have a look at my BPM, I can see on the BPM counter that this track is currently playing 123.2 BPM, okay? And I can see on my BPM counter on the other track, it's 121.9, okay? So that is going to be slower. And so if this track is playing like that, 123, and this track is playing 121, it's going to be like that. They're going to slowly drift out. So they need to be the same BPM. And I can know that that already needs to change because I can see that those BPMs are different. But on this particular controller, you have this thing here, which basically shows me that it needs to go up, right? And as soon as that red light goes off and that green tempo light comes on, it means that they are both at the same BPM. So this controller specifically has this visual cue for me, which really helps. And as I said earlier, like, anything that will help you to learn to DJ, use it. And there's also, on most equipment, you will find a sync button. And loads of people will tell you that the sync button is the devil. That's not true. If you are first starting out as DJ, use every tool that you possibly can to learn how to DJ. And if using the sync button helps you, press that goddamn button. And especially like if you're in a club, right, and you're playing and you hear a DJ crashing through every single mix, and I have heard that, you're like, press that damn button, because we don't want to hear that. Your music is great, but I don't want to hear a train crash. So don't be afraid to use the tools that are there to help us, right? And on this controller, as I said, the tools are there for us to help be able to indicate whether something's too fast, whether something's too slow, your BPM counters, your waveforms, everything. Use your visual cues. But also, whilst you're doing that, train your ears. Because that is what you really, really need to know. Because there are little things that once your ear starts to train, that you won't want your visual cues for. And if you were to, let's say, for example, then wanting to start playing vinyl, you need to use your ears. You need to be able to use your ears. And also, sometimes when you put waveforms in, it doesn't analyze it properly. And also some music, for example, disco music. Disco music was not recorded electronically. It is not a steady BPM. It will waver. And even some electronic tracks, like old house music, for example, some of it wavers a little bit. So if it does, your BPM is going to be going all over the place, really fluctuate very gently. You need to use your ears to be able to keep that in. But when you're first starting out, use your visual cues, use your sync button, use whatever it is that's going to help you. So I am going to show you that again. I've got 2 tracks loaded up here, 2 house tracks. Right. So as you can see from both these house tracks, like you can visually see on there, there's no like little intro thing at the beginning. It's straight in at the first beat of the bar, exactly where I want it to be. So I don't need to do that whole cue thing that I was showing you earlier. It's already done it for me. Okay, so this track I'm going to play, it is, I'm going to actually up the tempo a little bit. So I'm going to bring it to kind of the tempo that it should be, which is like 125-ish. Right. Okay. I'm just going to move this around. I'm going to turn the volume down a little bit so you can hear me. So I can already see the track that I've got loaded next. I can visually see it's 121.7 BPM. Okay? I want it to be the same as the other, so I need it to be 125. I can also see, I'm going to turn it on. I can also see from here, there's a little red light indicator that shows me it needs to be faster. So the tempo needs to be adjusted up to make it faster. So I'm going to do that, and as you see, as I'm moving this, it will also move the BPM up, right? So I want to bring it up to 125 BPM. Okay, exactly. So now it says on here, the green light has gone on, and they are now beat matched, tempo matched, right? The tempo matched. So the BPM is exactly the same. Now, because the BPM is exactly the same, it means that my beat match should stay in and not drift out. And what that means is, if I'm playing both the tracks for a really, really long time, they should still just sit exactly the same. If there's even a tiny, tiny increment, like even if I drop that to like 124.9, it sounds like a tiny, tiny amount of increment, but I can guarantee you that as the tracks are playing, it will slowly start to drift. And over time, those tracks will fall out of tempo. So it needs to be pretty exact as much as you can be, right? So I'm going to put this up. Now I want to phrase in, as I told you, the phrasing of tracks is like house music, dance music is in beats of 4. I told you at the beginning, you only need to be able to count to 4. So you've got phrases of 4, you've got 4, 8, 16, 32. Things happen in those periods of time. So the first 4 beats, the first 4 bars, you'll have like some drums come in. And then you might have some hi-hats come in, you might have something else. And they always happen in these increments of like 4, 8, 16, 32, right? So this is your building blocks. And it's almost like kind of building like Lego. When you're building tracks in and then building tracks out, it's kind of about layering them at the right place. You just need to layer them at like the 1 of the bar, of the like 32 bar, or the 16 bar, right? So they're layering in the right place. If you don't do that, like it doesn't have a smooth transition. It will kind of feel like, you know, when you're dancing, you're like, oh, that didn't come in the right place. That's because it hasn't come in on like the first beat of the first bar. So you need to make sure that your phrasing is correct. And you'll kind of know it because it would just feel like the time that you would like dance at a certain point. Like we've all danced in a club, right? And if something feels like, oh, this is going to happen, something's going to happen here. It's a feeling. You'll feel it. You can also count it, and it does really help. But it's also kind of a feeling. So I'm going to show. Go back to the beginning, and I'm going to tell you about the phrasing. Right. So that's one phrase there. So it's called in here, right? There. There, right? Can you hear what I mean by the phrasing? So you want to make sure that when you're bringing the next track in, it's on the right phrasing of that. So the 2 tracks layer at the right times. If I was going to practice mixing, be here, right? 5, 6, 7, 8, there, right? Okay. So, I'm listening to my headphones. Press play when the phrasing is right. Okay. The first thing I'm going to do is check my levels, right? So I'm going to check if the level's about, and they are about right. They're both kind of teetering on the edge of orange. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my cue there. Press play again. And I'm kind of confident listening that it's around the right BPM, which it is because I've already checked that. I'm going to go back to the beginning. I'm going to go back to the beginning by pressing my cue button. Remember? That's how you go back to the beginning of the track. Press play there. That's where the phrasing is. Now, on here, I can see that this red indicator is telling me that even though they're beat matched, it's behind where the beat is. So, it's now put itself in, right? You just push it forward slightly. And I can also visually see, right? You can see, right? If I go backwards, you see that track is going back. If I go forwards, it's moving it forwards. And what you want to do is can you see how it's now like the phrasing is kind of right? And it's telling me that the beat is aligned. So I'm using my visual cues there to see that the tracks are in. Okay. So we'll go back to the beginning and start again. Press my cue button. And here's the next phrase coming there. Right. Now, even though it's telling me on here it's beat aligned, I can hear on my headphones it's a little bit out. So I'm going to give it a nudge. Right. And I'm going to put the crossfade in the middle. Right. And I can see the tracks are still in. I can see here it's still in. I'm going to bring this track up. I can hear, needs a nudge. Okay. I'm going to bring the other track out. So essentially what you're doing with this, it's beat matching, but it's also using the same method that I taught you at the beginning of your fading in and fading out. Now, if you saw what I was doing there, it's telling me on these green lights that that beat was aligned, but I could hear that it wasn't. So that is what I was telling you about, is that use all your visual cues, use all your tools and tricks and trades, but you need to have your ear in tune as well. You need to be able to hear whether something is in or out. I have 25 years of practice to know that. So that's how I know whether something needs to be nudged forward or nudged back. And even though these visual cues were telling me it was locked in, it wasn't quite there properly. And that could also be because maybe when it's analysed the track, it's maybe analysed it with a tiny little bit at the beginning, so it's maybe not on directly on the first beat of the bar. So you have to listen with your ears as well. But for now, just kind of use your visual cues, use all the bits and tools, as I said, that help you. So I'm going to do that transition again. And remember, the things you need to remember. Number one, crossfader is in the middle because I'm using my sliders as my volume. And I'm using my sliders as my transition. Number two, my gains. Are the two tracks coming in at the same time? Or the same volume, sorry. Right? So I'm going to turn it down just to show you. Turn off the volume. Right? I can see here it needs more volume. And then now roughly pushing at the same volume. So I know when I bring this next track in, the volume's going to roughly be the same. And a really good indication for you if you are DJing in a club is everyone will say, do not red light, okay? So I do sometimes, and it's important to have a little bit of leeway with that. But generally, what you don't want to do is red light. So red light means when you can, I don't know if you can see from here, but you will be able to see in the other room, right? You have basically, as I was saying, your light indicators. When it's in the green, it's at like fine volume. Orange is like where you kind of want it to be sat. That's like the nice sweet spot. If it starts to tip the red, then it means it's too loud. And what sometimes will happen if something's too loud is like the club will automatically duck the volume of it, or it will just sound a bit crunchy and horrible. So you just want to make sure your premium, like optimum, is keeping it in the orange, right? And you'll see, and those colours are the same on every single mixer you'll see. So it's like green is kind of like okay, orange is optimum, red is don't tip it on the red, okay? So got my track playing. I'm going to start from the beginning. I've got my track playing, I've got my crossfader in the middle, I've got my two sliders, the one that's playing is up, the one that's going to come in is down. I'm listening to my headphones, I've got my headphones locked into the track that's going to be coming in. I'm going to test the volume and check whether they're the same-ish volume. I know that this track's going to kick, the bass line's going to kick in a second, and I go, okay. So roughly the same volume now. And then I'm ready to do my transition, okay? And the next thing I want to listen out for is the phrasing, so when I want to bring the track in. So I'm going to listen in my headphones to make sure I've got this right. And this is a halfway point. And the next one is coming up now. So I press play there, okay? And I can already see from this, it needs to be nudged forward slightly. And I can also see on here, it also needs to be nudged forward. You see those lines? They need to like match up exactly. And I can hear on my headphones, it still needs a little bit of nudging, even though it's telling me. So I'm gonna nudge it slightly. And I'm gonna start transitioning it in. Right? And then slowly bring the other one out. called yo. So that's a really basic beat match. Does everyone get that? Everyone understand? You're all going to have a go at all of these transitions, okay? And these are kind of like really mostly the only 3 transitions you'll ever need when you're DJing. And there's some like little tips and tricks and things that you can do. And there's one thing I'm going to show you now, which is using your EQ. So your EQs basically isolate certain frequencies. So you've got bass, middle, and treble. So if I take my bass down, it's taking all my kicks and my bass out. If I take the mid out, it's taking the midsection. Usually the midsection is like synths, vocals, that kind of stuff. And then your top, which is your high, it takes all the high frequencies out, which is basically like hi-hats, maybe top-end synths, some vocals. But the most important one that generally DJs tend to use is your bass kill. Because A, it can be used as a kind of like effect, right? To add a little bit of a flavor. So I'll do it now. Drop the bass out. And bring it back in. So it kind of adds a little bit of flavor. And as I was saying, like one of the things about DJing is like creating your own flair. And like one of your own flair is like all the flavors and stuff you use, all your effects, all your little like EQs, all your little like whatever little fancy things you do, right? So one of the other ways that your bass is really great is when you're mixing, the things that generally tend to clash when you're beat matching is the kick drums. So I'm going to show you how to do a transition where you do what's called a bass swap, right? So the track that's playing is going to have all the EQs straight up, so everything's playing as it should be. The track I'm going to bring in is going to have the bass killed. So it's going to have no kick drums. Like you can still hear a little bit of it, but like you can hear the difference between when it's in and when it's out, right? So the track that's coming in, I'm going to take the kick and the bass out of it. And then when I'm ready to swap them over, you literally do a swap like that. Okay, I will show you. Yeah, excellent. Okay, so the track that's playing, everything's up, all the EQs are up, everything. So remember what I was telling you? I'm going to go through all of the things that you need to remember. Okay. So first of all, crossfade in the middle. Okay? This track is up, the fader is up, your gains, everything's up, your EQs, everything's in the middle, the track that's playing now. I want to hear the track that I'm going to bring in. So my headphone cue is on the track that's playing at the moment. I don't want it there. I want to change my headphone cue to the track that I'm going to bring in, okay? So I'm going to listen to that track. You're not going to be able to hear it. I'm going to be able to hear it. You're not going to be able to hear it. Okay. Okay. So now the first thing to remember is, right, I'm going to actually change to my throat now. So I'm going to do this beat match. There's 2 completely new tracks. So the track that's playing at the moment is 130 BPM, because I can see, because it's on the indicator, yeah? You can all see it's 130 BPM, right? So the track that I've got that I'm going to be bringing in is currently set 125. So I want to be able to make sure that those tempos are matched so it doesn't drift out. So the way that I'm going to do it is my tempo control. And as I said, this red indicator here is visually telling me that the tempo needs to be pushed up. I can also see that it's too slow anyway. It's 125, I want it to be 130. So I'm going to use my tempo control to bring it up. You can visually see that it's going 128, 129. It's coming up. It's 130 BPM now. So those two should, in theory, be at the same tempo, okay? So I'm going to do that thing where I'm going to check my volumes as well. So I can see that the volume of the track that I'm bringing in is too loud. So I'm going to change the gain on that. So they're now roughly the same volume, okay? I'm going to start from the beginning. And then the next thing I want to do is take the bass out of the one that I'm bringing in. Okay. So this is the breakdown. I'm going to let the breakdown happen, and then I'm going to press play at the end of the breakdown and then start my transition, okay? And I can also kind of like visually see where the breakdown's coming in. This is still the breakdown. Still a little sexy thing. I'm going to let this do a little sexy thing.
Watch this pretty hard side.
Then that came in there, right? So halfway. So I'm going to start to play from here. I can see from this it needs to go fast. I can also hear, right? So I'm going to jog my wheel. Now they're beat aligned, okay? So bring it in. I'm jogging it because I can hear by my ear that it's slightly out. And I just swap the bass. And you can see me nudging it, but again, like they're telling me that it's aligned, but I can hear very slightly that it's slightly out. And then I'm just going to bring it down. So did you hear what I did with that bass swap, right? So as I said, like the things that generally tend to clash is your kick drums and your bass. So if you do that little bass swap when you're doing your transition and then you swap them over at the right time, then it kind of creates like this, like you sort of hear when the next track is coming in, but also it just takes that little bit of an edge off. Like, you know what I was telling you about, like the train crash, which we have all heard in a club. And as I was saying, you can see that I was still jogging the wheel slightly, even though it was telling me it was beat match. And the reason I was doing that is because my ears were telling me that I knew that they weren't quite in, because I can hear that it's like, instead of being there, it's like there, which is like not that much of a difference, but enough for me to be able to hear the difference. So I nudged it in slightly, but this wasn't picking it up, right? It was telling me that it was in. It wasn't, very slightly nudged. An indication of most house music and probably techno music as well. A lot of them are roughly 5 to 6 minutes long. Generally, a lot of house music and a lot of techno music. Techno can sometimes be a bit longer. Generally, they're usually between sort of 5, 6, 7 minutes long, right? The best time to mix 2 tracks in is usually to layer it at around 1 minute 23 seconds or 55 seconds, right? Because that is like where the outro of most dance tracks start to happen, is like 1 minute 23 or 50 seconds out of the track. And then the intro of the track is usually roughly about the same. So you kind of have this really beautiful kind of cementing layer of like 1 minute 23 or 55 seconds of the outro of a track and the intro of a track. They'll meld really nicely together. The more that you allow that to happen, like if you waited till like 45 seconds, for example, what you'll have is like a slight dip in energy, and it will go like that. If you layer it like a 1:23, 1 minute 23, and I say 1 minute 23, like it's a rough guide, but like that's kind of where your general phrasing happens. It will layer really, really nicely like that, and you kind of won't get a dip in energy. If you bring in it at 55-ish seconds, it's basically another kind of like 16 bars around. You might have a slight dip in energy, and then it will bring back up again. So just remember to look at your kind of like how much longer you've got left of a track. Of roughly, that's when you kind of maybe want to think about bringing a track in. So I'll show you this one here, right? So I'm going to bring it down to like 148. So as you can see from here, we've just kind of had a breakdown. And we're coming up for 130. And this is the middle bit. It's called 125, so it's roughly around here, 123. And I want to bring it in. See here, 198, right?
We're not.
So bring the bass down.
We're not.
Nudge it slightly. And you'll hear how like the building blocks kind of like make sense with each other. We're gonna do a bass swap here. Nudging it slightly. Even though it says it's in, I can hear it's out slightly. And I'll start bringing the other track out. But basically, when you do that, the building blocks kind of like make sense for each other because tracks are built up by building blocks. It's like the intro, it gets a bit more, You have a vocal coming in, you have a breakdown. It's all in these kind of chunks of 16. And they kind of build up the same way that they break down. So it creates this ability to kind of like layer these tracks over the top of each other in a really nice way. So that's why, remember those timings. It's like 123-ish, like 123 on this track, it was 119, right? Or 55 seconds. And that kind of gives you're going into it. If you go any later than that, you're not actually giving yourself quite enough time to do the mix because it will start to dip in energy because the outro will start to really happen before the next track comes in. So there is a style of mixing which is like you mix in key. I often tend to mix in key by natural default because I'm a singer and because I hear the pitch and the keys of things. But generally when you're mixing a lot of dance music, with the way that I was saying about layering tracks, a lot of the intros and outros of dance music is mostly just drums. So you can't really hear if there's much of a pitch, like if it doesn't match properly. But it is a really nice thing to do to like match keys of tracks. And yeah, with a lot of dance music, the key kind of doesn't matter until the bass kicks in or a vocal kicks in or something like that. So it's not necessary, but it's something to look out for. But one thing to definitely remember is that key lock is quite an important feature, and I personally always switch it on. Okay. Does anyone else have any questions?
I was wondering, when you're doing the cue stuff, are you prepping a lot of that ahead of time, or are you kind of cueing stuff when you've got this other track playing and then you know that you want to come in on a certain part of the song?
Sort of both. Like when you're creating your cue point, that is basically, as I was showing, you're like cutting out any intro bits that you don't want, and you're making sure that your track starts exactly on the upbeat or the first beat of the bar. Especially with a lot of dance music, as I said, or even with like pop music or any form of like multi-genre music, you want to make sure that your track starts in the right place. So you could do that when the track's played. It doesn't necessarily need to be in time. But when you're listening to kind of like, I want to know how my transition might sound. And with the track that's playing, if it's, let's say, a pop music track or a hip hop track or something which is like, you know, a multi-genre kind of open format track, that track will probably be like 2 or 3 minutes. You've got 2 or 3 minutes to listen to get your transition correct with the track coming in. Whilst you're listening, what you want to do is like, listen to when something's coming in. Listen to what that intro sounds like. Listen to whether it's in the right key or not. Listen to like the little bits and pieces of the track that's coming in so you can get a feel for when you might want to bring that track in. And with dance music, you've got 5 or 6 minutes to do that. And when you're practicing that mix, you might not necessarily practice the mix when you're doing like the fade in, fade out, because it's kind of quite a simple mix. But when you're doing beat matching, you want to practice that beat match. And when you do that, that cue and that play, you want to practice the mix. So you want to get it at the right phrasing, bringing it in at the right time, listen to whether the mix sounds right or not, listen to when stuff is coming in. So like, when is the kick drum coming in? When is the vocals coming in? Like you've got 5 or 6 seconds to listen to how that intro of that track is sounding. And when you do that, yes, you want to do it at the right phrasing. So initially when you're creating the cue, just do it. But then when you're starting to practice the mix that you're about to do it at the correct phrasing.
I had 2 questions, which was, what's the, not worst, but what's the worst like genre of music to start practicing on?
Just for open format, actually, like multi-genre and multi-BPM is like the hardest stuff to mix. If you're doing that simple kind of fade in, fade out, fine. But if you want to learn kind of like the skills of like beat matching and things like that, you want to have a genre or genres of music that roughly have the same BPM. And when you're mixing tracks, you kind of, as a rule, don't want tracks that are more than 10 BPMs difference, right? So for example, garage music is somewhere usually between sort of 135 BPM and 140 BPM-ish, right, as a rule. But let's say like some deep house music is like 120 BPM, right? 120 BPM to 135 BPM is too much of a difference. You will really hear the difference between like trying to meet in the middle. So when you're trying to practice mixing for the first time, try and stick to one genre. I personally don't play that much drum and bass, but someone has told me that actually drum and bass is probably, weirdly, one of the easiest musics to learn on. I haven't played a huge amount of drum and bass myself, and my brain thinks that would be really hard because drum and bass is like sort of 150, 160-ish BPM. It's really fast, but apparently it's quite an easy one to learn. But it's not, I wouldn't say there's anything that is harder or easier to learn on. I would say one of the things that's probably the hardest is like when something's really percussive. So when you've got something that's got like drums which are all over the place and like a lot of Latin or a lot of percussive house. And the reason why is because it is those percussions and your drums that are going to clash the most. So it's easier to pick genres which are kind of like just that little bit more staccato. So like house music, techno music, anything which kind of has a regular beat. Garage music is also a little bit harder to mix because it has that kind of like shuffle beat. And so a shuffle on one might be different from a shuffle on another. But as long as you're kind of like picking music and genres which like roughly the same BPM, you're going to be fine.
And my other question was, what would be the best way to approach making a playlist? Because in the past, someone said to me, think of like making a story, but I didn't understand what that meant.
It is whatever makes sense to you.
Yeah.
So when I'm making playlists, like I actually make a playlist pretty much for every single set that I play. And the reason I do that is because I play so many different types of music and in like different places, different times, different hubs, different genres, right? What I play for a daytime set on a terrace at a festival is going to be really different to what I play at 4 a.m. in a sway club. And like, you know, I can play anything from disco to Italo to techno to whatever. So I will build playlists for every single set that I do. And the way that I approach it is just like, I might have maybe 100 tracks and I might have like 5 or 6 like playlists within that track, within that kind of folder. So like, let's say, I don't know, I'm playing at the Calls this weekend, right? I'm playing at, I don't know, 2 o'clock in the morning. And I know the type of music I'm going to play because I've researched the DJ that's playing before me. I've researched the DJ that's playing after me. I know what my sound needs to be to fit in between those 2 DJs. So that's a really important thing about thinking about your sets as well, is who you're playing in between and what kind of time you're playing. Think about the energy that you might need for that. So I will create a specific playlist for this particular set. And I'll have like, 4 or 5 different playlists within that one folder, Bookall's birthday, right? And then within that, I'll have like maybe something that's, I might just label it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 might be like 1 is slightly lower energy, 5 is really high energy. And I'm not talking BPM, I'm talking like how heavy something is. And like the start of my set, I might feel like it's a little bit lighter. By the end of my set, I want it to be much heavier because it's later in the evening. So that's how I'm going to maybe like, it will just be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Or I might be like, this is some percussive stuff. This is some high energy stuff. This is some kind of like Italo dancey sounding stuff. So I'll create playlists with like music that sounds similar-ish. But it's whatever makes sense to me.
Hi, Michelle. I just want to say thank you for your time. It's been such a smooth workshop, great communication. My question was about BPM, so kind of like from the first answer you gave. Is there a rule of changing the BPM on a track you're currently playing in, like, let's say, the club, if you wanted to like bring it down by a few beats per minute or up? Is that something you should do, or is that, I don't know?
So the thing that I showed you with the key lock, right? That will allow you to change the BPM of a track that's playing without anyone necessarily hearing it too much. So if a track is playing, I'm going to just play this now, right? So it says playing at 125 BPM, but maybe I want to lift the tempo a little bit because I feel like it's a little bit too slow. And I know that the next track I'm playing is like 130 BPM, right? And I want to play that next track, but it's 5 BPM faster. So the track that's playing now, I might just very gently start to nudge it up. And if I've got that key lock in, the dance floor won't notice too much, right? And as you can hear, I've already shifted up by 1 BPM by me talking to you, and you haven't really noticed too much. And just shift it up a little bit. It's now 127. We started at 125. You can't hear that. You haven't noticed the difference. But if you keep that key lock on, that can keep it. I would say don't do it more than like 3 BPM-ish if you're changing the tempo of a track that's playing. Because if you change it too much, like I'll play, right? This is 124 at the moment. If I start to shift it up, you can really start to feel that difference, yeah? Because that's like 4 or 5 BPM that I've pitched it up to 129. It's a little bit too much. It will start to feel a bit like jolty on the dance floor. If you do it in really small increments, then you can do it. And like, yeah, energy-wise, I would say you do want to probably, through a set, you do want to probably like start lifting the tempo up a little bit or like lifting the energy up. So yeah, you can.